Chapter 1. The Broken Wing. The floating market of Ithros Station shimmered, like a drifting constellation, its hull-bound city strung with rivers of neon and banners that snapped in artificial breezes. Caleb Reese shouldered his satchel and walked the upper causeway, boots ringing against the steel planks. The air here always smelled faintly of ionized ozone mixed with spices he couldn't name. Sweet, sharp, alien. Voices overlapped, hundreds of tongues rising and falling in a vaulted chamber beneath the translucent dome where Ithros' artificial sun pulsed. He stopped when he saw the child. A Varen, thin, graceful, feathers cascading from his scaled shoulders like molten gold, struggled at the edge of the crowd, one leg bent unnaturally, every step dragging the boy's body sideways. The child's eyes, glossy black like polished stone, darted the ground as if hoping no one would notice. But they did. The other Varens glanced, grimaced, and turned away. Their culture tolerated no weakness. To stumble was to shame one's bloodline. Caleb exhaled, jaw tightening. He knew the rules. Don't get involved. Don't make a scene. Humans were tolerated here barely, and only because they were good with machines no one else wanted to fix. But when the boy's claws scraped against the floor and he fell, wings flaring in humiliation, Caleb's feet moved before his mind could stop them. "Easy there, kid," he murmured, crouching beside him. The boy flinched at the human's voice, shame burning in his eyes. Caleb offered his hand. The child hesitated, then gripped it, warm scales under trembling fingers. Caleb hauled him upright and forced a crooked smile. "See? No fall that can't be fixed." That night, in his cluttered workshop under Ithros' lower decks, Caleb couldn't shake the image. The hum of plasma cutters and the gentle thrum of the station's reactor pulsed through the walls as he laid scrap alloys across his bench. He muttered to himself, welding sparks casting sharp shadows. Lightweight, adjustable struts, hinged for spring. The smell of scorched metal filled the air. Hours bled away until the framework took shape. A crutch, sleek and jointed like a wing bone, reinforced with starship plating and balanced with micro-servos scavenged from an old drone. It wasn't beautiful, but it was strong. When he returned to the marketplace at dawn, the boy was there again, hunched against the walls. Caleb knelt and held out the crutch. "Try it." The child blinked, suspicion warring with desperate hope. He slid the support under his arm, talons clutching the grip. With a shaky step, then another, he moved, not dragging, not crawling, walking. His feathers rippled in disbelief. For a heartbeat, Caleb grinned, pride swelling in his chest. Then he heard the gasp. A crowd of Varens had stopped, eyes wide with horror. Whispers rippled like knives through the market. One word hissed over and over in their guttural dialect. Sacrilege. And Caleb knew, even before the guards came, that he had broken something far greater than a bone. Chapter 2. The Emperor's Decree. By the time the station's false sun reached its zenith, Ithros was trembling under the weight of authority. The docking gates sealed. Merchant ships were forced idle mid-orbit, their calm silence under imperial encryption. Caleb heard it first as a low, resonant hum, vibrating up to the floor of his workshop. The war drums of a Varen fleet arriving. The walls shook as a cruiser docked, a vessel carved from black crystal, its hull etched with flowing sigils of flame. Soldiers poured out, tall Varens in segmented armor, cloaks trailing like molten banners. Their talons clattered against the steel as they marched. Even the crowds, usually rowdy with bargaining, fell silent. They came for him. Caleb didn't resist when they tore open his workshop doors with a searing plasma lance. The smell of scorched metal and ozone filled the cramped space. Tools and parts scattered across the floor. 2 guards yanked him forward, pinning his arms behind his back as the commander. Feathers lacquered in gold resin, eyes like shards of obsidian, surveyed the ruined crutch left on his bench. "You dare," the commander hissed, holding aloft. You defiled the body gifted by the eternal line. Caleb's mouth was dry, but he forced himself to speak. I just gave the boy a way to walk. That's all. A murmur swept the gathering crowd. From the corner of his eye, Caleb saw the child, standing, trembling, clutching the crutch like a lifeline. The boy's gaze flicked to him, pleading, but the guard shoved Caleb down the corridor before he could say more. They dragged him into the imperial court, a temporary dais erected in the station's central chamber. The place smelled of incense, bitter, metallic, alien. Columns of light rose from crystalline braziers, illuminating the nobles who had gathered. Feathers dyed crimson, emerald, violet, each hue a mark of lineage. Caleb's grease-stained clothes and human sweat seemed to stain the air itself. At the far end, atop a raised platform, sat Emperor Talvren, his wings folded around him like a cloak, his crown a ring of living fire suspended by magnetic levitation. His gaze fixed on Caleb, sharp and merciless. Human. The Emperor's voice thundered, amplified through the chamber's resonance fields. You dared impose your crude inventions upon the blood of my line. My grandson. Caleb swallowed hard, chains biting into his wrists. He was suffering. I couldn't just watch. You should have, Talvren roared. The nobles hissed their approval, feathers rattling like blades. Suffering is sacred. Pain is a forge. To interfere is to spit upon the order of stars themselves. The hall vibrated with every word, but Caleb raised his chin, meeting the Emperor's eyes. Back where I come from, we don't let kids fight battles they can't win alone. We build. We help. That's what makes us strong. A dangerous silence fell. The nobles shifted uneasily. Some sneered at his insolence, but others looked unsettled. A ripple of doubt, barely visible, passed through their ranks. Talvren leaned forward, talons curling around the arms of his throne. You will learn humility. Human. Tomorrow, your execution will remind all species of their place beneath the eternal line. The guards wrenched Caleb away, dragging him down into the obsidian tunnels below. But even as chains scraped against stone, he caught one last glimpse of the boy, still clutching forbidden crutch, tears shimmering against scaled cheeks. Chapter 3. The Chains and the Flame. The prison beneath the Varen Star Palace was carved from black stone that pulsed faintly with inner light, as if the rock itself had swallowed a star. Chains clinked every time Caleb shifted on the cold slab they called a bed. The air smelled of minerals and damp, touched with a faint, acrid tang, like iron left too long in the rain. Above, he could feel the thrum of the palace engines through the walls, a heartbeat of machinery and power. He had stopped counting the hours when the door unsealed with a hiss. A figure stepped inside. A Varen woman draped in pale robes, her feathers glinting silver in the dim light. Unlike the guards, she carried no weapons. Instead, she held a datapad and a small satchel of instruments. Her eyes lingered on Caleb, sharp but not cruel. "I am Lyra," she said, her voice soft but edged with formality. "Physician of the court, I was ordered to assess whether your primitive body will survive the spectacle tomorrow." Caleb smirked despite the ache in his jaw. "Glad to know someone's thinking about my health before they kill me." Lyra's feathers rippled in what might have been amusement, though it passed quickly. She set down her tools and scanned him with a handheld device, beams of green light tracing across his skin. Her talons tapped at the datapad, then hesitated. "You have scar tissue," she murmured, almost to herself. "Old wounds. Yet your body adapted." Caleb flexed against the chains, metal grinding against metal. "Where I come from, you either adapt or you don't make it. That's how we survive." Her eyes flicked up to his, studying him with something more than curiosity now. Among the Varen, suffering is a mark of honor. To endure without aid is proof of worth. But you fight suffering as though it is an enemy. It is, Caleb said simply. We don't worship pain. We beat it, build around it. No one should be left behind just because they were born unlucky. For a long moment, the only sound was the low hum of the prison walls. Lyra closed the scanner, but her gaze lingered, troubled. You risk death, she said finally, for a child who is not your blood. For one of us. That is rare. Caleb leaned forward, chains rattling. Maybe, but it shouldn't be. Before she could answer, a faint scratching echoed in the corridor. Lyra tensed, feathers flaring. A small shape darted into the cell as the door cycled open. It was the boy, Caleb's boy, the Emperor's grandson. His crutch clicked softly against the floor, his breath sharp with fear. You helped me, the child whispered in broken standard, eyes gleaming. Now I help you. I can open the doors. You can run. Caleb's throat tightened. For a moment, freedom shimmered in front of him like the open stars. But he shook his head. No, he said gently. If I run, they'll only call me a coward. What I did won't mean anything. I have to face them. The boy's feathers drooped, his small claws curling tighter around the crutch. Lyra watched in silence, her expression unreadable. But Caleb saw something flicker there, a crack in the certainty she had worn like armor. When the guards came to take the child away, Caleb was left alone again in the glowing dark. Yet the cell felt different now. Not just a cage, but a waiting place. Tomorrow, he knew, wasn't only about his death. It was about proving humanity's fire in the heart of an empire that had forgotten what compassion looked like. Chapter 4. Fire in the Court of Stars. The court chamber blazed with light. Crystal spires arched overhead, refracting beams into 1,000 shifting colors that danced across the obsidian floor. The sound of Caleb's chains echoed as guards dragged him forward, each clink swallowed by the cavernous space. The nobles lined the galleries above. Plumes of feathers dyed in crimson, emerald, and sapphire, their jeweled eyes fixed on him as if he were an insect pinned to glass. At the center of the hall loomed the throne of Talvren, suspended on a dais of gravitic fields. It shimmered like a living flame, a ring of burning symbols orbiting the Emperor's head in slow procession. Talvren himself was immense, his scales dark as midnight, his wings folded like blades against his back. Every feather gleamed as though dipped in molten gold. His gaze pinned Caleb the way a predator watches prey before the strike. The guard shoved Caleb to his knees. The metallic taste of blood lingered in his mouth, but he lifted his head, meeting the Emperor's eyes without flinching. Human, Talvren thundered, his voice reverberating through the resonance chambers until it seemed the very walls spoke with him. You dared alter the flesh of my grandson. You spit upon eternal line, upon the trial of pain that makes us strong. The nobles hissed, feathers rattling like blades of glass in the wind. Caleb's chest heaved, but his voice was steady. Your grandson was crawling on the floor, humiliated, broken. I gave him a chance to walk, to live. That's not weakness. That's, he paused, searching for the right words, strength shared. A ripple of unease moved through the chamber. Some nobles sneered, but others shifted, their gazes flickering. Caleb pressed on. Where I come from, strength isn't about who suffers the longest or bleeds the hardest. It's about how far we'll go to lift each other up. No child should have to prove their worth by suffering. Talvren rose from his throne, towering, his wings snapping open with metallic crack. You dare lecture us on strength, fragile creature? Your kind are soft. Break your bones, and you patch them. Dull your senses with medicines. You scurry from pain as if it's a shadow. Caleb forced a bitter laugh. Maybe, but that's why we endure. We don't worship pain, we fight it and we survive. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us dangerous. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Then the boy stepped forward. Gasps swept the chamber as the Emperor's grandson limped into the hall, his crutch clicking against the floor. Guards reached for him, but he pushed past, eyes bright with defiance. His small body trembled, but he lifted his chin and turned, bowing, not to the Emperor but to Caleb. The hall froze. Nobles whispered furiously, some in outrage, some in awe. The child's voice, high and trembling, rang out across the chamber. He gave me flight where you gave me chains. For the first time, Talvren's composure cracked. His talons dug into the throne's armrests, gouging deep scars into the crystal. And Caleb, chained and bleeding, allowed himself the smallest, fiercest smile. Chapter 5. The Spark That Cannot Be Killed. The silence in the court chamber shattered like glass. Emperor Talvren's roar split the air, his wings snapping wide, sending ripples through the gravitic fields that held his throne aloft. "Seize them both," he bellowed, his voice reverberating until it seemed the very crystal columns groaned in fear. Guards surged forward, spears crackling with plasma tips. But not all moved. A cluster of nobles rose from their seats, feathers bristling in defiance. One of them, cloaked in scarlet, slammed a talon against his chest. The boy speaks truth. Strength is not the Emperor's alone to define. Chaos erupted. The resonance field destabilized under the weight of shouting, wings beating, and energy weapons sparking. A stray bolt struck one of the crystal spires, shattering it into a glittering storm. Shards spun through the air, and then gravity failed. The chamber dissolved into weightlessness. Nobles, guards, and attendants alike lifted from the floor, wings flaring instinctively, robes twisting around them in slow-motion arcs. The sound of battle became muffled, disorienting, as if carried through water. Caleb's chains rattled as he floated upward, but instinct kicked in, twisting. He caught a jagged fragment of broken crystal and used its sharp edge to saw at his bonds. Sparks danced as the shards screeched against metal. His muscles screamed from the strain, but he gritted his teeth. Across the chamber, Lyra appeared, slipping from the shadows of a column. Her silver feathers fanned out, catching the light as she propelled herself toward him. She reached into her robes and pressed something cold into his palm, a compact plasma cutter, its hum alive with promise. "Use it," she hissed, her eyes darting nervously toward the guards. Caleb didn't hesitate. He ignited the cutter, its blade a searing line of blue, and sliced through the last of his chains. The metal snapped, and he drifted free, blood rushing with adrenaline. A guard lunged at him, wings driving the armored body forward like a spear. Caleb kicked off a floating slab of shattered dais, spinning in midair, and slammed the plasma cutter into the guard's chest plate. The smell of burning alloy filled the chamber as the Varen shrieked, flailing backward into melee. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. He grabbed another shard of crystal, its edge wickedly sharp, and used it like a knife. Every move was desperate improvisation. Chains whipping as makeshift weapons, debris turned into shields. The Varen fought with practiced precision, their wings maneuvering them gracefully in zero-G. But Caleb's chaos was unpredictable. He fought dirty, human, turning the environment itself into his ally. Above the battle, the Emperor hovered, wings thrumming with furious power. His voice cut through the din like thunder. "Crush the heretic. Burn this rebellion from the marrow of our bones." But already the tide was shifting. Nobles clashed in midair, some fighting for the Emperor, others protecting the boy who floated at the center of it all, gripping his crutch like a banner. Every cry, every clash of talons and sparks, carried the same unspoken truth. Something had changed. The crack in their culture was widening. Caleb drifted near Lyra again, breath ragged, sweat stinging his eyes. "This isn't just about me anymore," he rasped. "They've seen it. They can't unsee it." She gave him a fierce, almost fearful look. "You've lit a fire, human, Whether it consumes you or the throne remains to be seen. Caleb raised a shard of crystal in trembling defiance, the chaos of battle swirling around him like a storm of stars. He knew he might not leave this hall alive, but he also knew one thing for certain. The Emperor's empire would never be the same. Chapter 6. The Crutch and Crown. When the fighting finally ceased, the chamber floated in silence, heavy as the void. The air was thick with smoke from scorched crystal and the acrid sting of burned alloys. Nobles clung to fractured balconies, wings tattered, feathers drifting like ash. Guards drifted unconscious or dead, their armor cracked and sparking. And in the center, Caleb Reese hovered, chest heaving, gripping the jagged crystal shard until his knuckles bled. Around him, shards of the Emperor's dais spun in lazy orbits, glittering like frozen stars. His voice had gone hoarse, his muscles trembled, but he remained upright, a single human holding his ground in a hall that had never known defiance. Emperor Talvren still stood, wings spread wide, though even he seemed dimmed by the rebellion's shadow. His grandson clung to the crutch, drifting between them, eyes wide. "Enough," the Emperor growled, the word trembling with fury and exhaustion. "This farce ends. Guards, remove him." But no one moved. The guards who remained glanced at each other, hesitant. The nobles whispered, some averting their eyes, others watching Caleb with something new in their gaze. Not hatred, not contempt, something closer to fear or awe. Caleb spat blood, his grin ragged. "Looks like they're not listening anymore." Talvren's feathers rattled, sparks snapping across his crown of fire. He raised a talon, ready to strike, but then stopped. The boy had placed himself between them, small chest heaving, his crutch braced like a shield. "No, grandfather," the child said, his voice clear and sharp. "I will not crawl." The chamber froze. Talvren's burning eyes flicked from his grandson to Caleb, then to the watching nobles. The weight of the moment pressed down like artificial gravity, suddenly restored. If he struck now, he would not just kill a human. He would break the fragile thread holding his empire together. Finally, with a snarl that reverberated through every crystal pillar, the Emperor lowered his hand. "So be it. The human lives. But he is no guest of the Varen. He is Exile. Let him crawl back to his kind." The words cracked through the chamber like a whip. Guards surged forward at last, but not to kill, only to seize Caleb, binding his wrists once more. Hours later, aboard his battered freighter, Caleb sat slumped in the pilot's chair, watching Ithros shrink in the viewport. The engines thrummed beneath him, steady and alive, carrying him away from the world where he had nearly died. Beside him, Lyra adjusted the controls, her silver feathers gleaming in the dim light. She had boarded in silence, no longer a physician of court, but something else, something freer. "You've marked them," she said quietly. "The Emperor will pretend his power is unbroken, but the seed is planted. They will remember." Caleb's gaze drifted to the stars. It wasn't about me. It was about him. And in his mind, he saw the boy, standing proud in a hall of fire and crystal, gripping the forbidden crutch not as shame, but as crown. The ship shuddered as it leapt into faster-than-light, streaking toward unknown stars. Caleb leaned back, letting the hum of the engines lull him. He had been exiled, branded heretic, hunted, but he smiled, faint and fierce, because he knew that one small act of kindness had already bent the spine of an empire. The freighter's engines hummed with a steady rhythm, a heartbeat carrying them through the velvet dark. Beyond the viewport, alien constellations stretched like jeweled rivers across the void, untouched and waiting. Artificial gravity pulsed faintly underfoot, the ship's systems whispering around them in soft tones of survival. Caleb sat in the pilot's chair, hands loose on the controls, eyes fixed on the stars. For the first time since Ithros, his shoulders eased. The weight of chains, crystal courts, and fire-crowned emperors seemed to drift away, leaving only the memory of a child standing tall with a crutch that had become a banner. Lyra entered quietly, her silver feathers catching the glow of the cockpit lights, her eyes reflecting the infinite stretch of space. She lingered for a moment, watching him. Then, softly, she spoke. "You change more than one boy, Caleb Reese. You change me." He turned, meeting her gaze. For a moment, no words came, only the hum of the ship and the silence between heartbeats. Finally, he reached for her hand, rough human skin against cool, scaled talons. "I didn't mean to start a war," he said, voice low, steady. "I only wanted him to walk." "And because of that," she whispered, leaning closer, "an empire may learn to stand." The freighter surged into faster than light, the stars stretching into rivers of light. Together, they watched the universe open before them, two exiles bound by a dream no throne could cage.